something that my 5-year-old said after spending Saturday watching his big brother play Minecraft, and I think they played Wii together, and it was probably a rainy weekend. Anyway, on the Sunday morning, they woke up at some ungodly hour, as they do, and came in, and I said, "Oh, can you just go and watch TV?" And my 5-year-old announced, "I don't want to watch TV. It doesn't do anything." And so I thought that was sort of a great kind of, indication to me about where, the future generations are heading, and the need for engagement and their expectation for engagement. So anyway, now on to Here Right Now. Basically a gameful solution to, quite literally, a testing problem. Oh, the places you'll go. Or should it be, oh, the places you'll go? But no, oh, the places you'll go is a fitting description by the wonderfully creative Dr. Seuss about the journey ahead for serious game developers. The journey is really, it's not a quick trip. It's more like probably the Amazing Race. You sort of know where you'll start, and you'll hopefully know where you'll finish, but where you go on the way is really anyone's guess. But with most journeys, Here Right Now began with the gift of inspiration. So in 2010, I heard about a wonderful guy called Associate Professor Kelvin Kong. And Kelvin Kong is Australia's first Australian Indigenous surgeon. And he's really set about trying to change the way health issues are tackled in the ATSI community, which is a pretty big deal. And basically hearing about his story and his work as an ear, nose and throat surgeon was the spark that ignited my interest in creating change.
Hearing health, it's an invisible disease process. You don't know what's going on unless you actually get a bit more emotionally involved with the parents and the family. What level do you have the TV on that? Lara. The change we're trying to achieve is the general complete care of a child's growth from the day they're born, even from when pregnancy to the day they're born, right through to getting through school, so that the kids in the remote areas, rural areas, and also a lot of the Aboriginal population in the urban centres have equal opportunities to employment, education and lifestyle purely based on them, rather than being always behind in terms of hearing health.
He gets earaches every now and then. Got a problem, so it's good to come for the checkup, isn't it? Jack? It's good, eh? Get your ear checked out because you always get earaches.
Jack is a young boy who has the classic problem of glue ear. Glue ear is a condition where fluid builds up into the middle ear cleft or the middle ear cavity, and because of fluids within that ear, the eardrum doesn't wobble. When the eardrum doesn't wobble, they don't hear, and this is a classic part of it that we're seeing. The drum should be nice and flat like this. On his ear, instead of being like that, both of them look like that. And so sucked in all bit. That means the eardrum's not wobbling properly. If the eardrum's not wobbling properly, he's not hearing. Jack's at the early end of the spectrum in terms of ear disease. So on one hand, we have older patients who've had perforations their whole life, and you wonder what happens if I've got access to that person at an early age. Here it is in the form of Jack. And so this is the whole idea of why we want to look at screening processes and we look at things earlier and earlier, so that we don't let Jack skew from the wrong, or in the wrong path. How old is Jack now? 7. What's it like being 7? Alright? Better than 6? Ear disease is often masked. And here's a beautiful kid who's very happy, who's very interactive, who no one even know he had quite a profound hearing loss. When we did his hearing test, he had a 40 dB hearing loss. 40 dB being the extent of what the hearing loss can be. That's quite a significant loss for someone his age. So for him to be enduring that and seem not to have a problem with it means, in my mind, he's one of these ones that you can predict that when they get hearing back, he's just going to exponentially improve in his general being, his speech, his learning, his interactions, his social environment will be great.
So as you can see, Associate Professor Kong is a pretty inspirational character. He's an amazing man, but he has his work cut out for him. The World Health Organization actually states that Indigenous Australians have some of the worst levels of ear infections in the world. I believe they actually have the second worst hearing health in the world. And statistics indicate, and they're probably quite conservative, that something like 30% of Indigenous children suffer from ear disease. So if they have ear disease, they effectively can't hear. And if you can't hear, you can't learn. So this is, you know, there is a situation here that basically any help that we can offer is going to be of value. So at this point in the journey of Here Right Now, the creative juices started flowing and I had that revelatory moment. Why not develop a game to test for hearing loss in preschool children? I was pretty confident that the idea was solid, but I had to know more. I had to know if something like this existed. I had to know if it was possible, and I also had to know if the audiology community was open to change, because their support obviously was critical. So having a background in television and documentary production, I put on my research hat and, you know, I started the long journey of research. And the first person I spoke to, of course, was Associate Professor Kelvin Kong. And I put the idea to him, and he was very supportive and basically said that anything that would help assess hearing loss and was actually more accessible as a tool would be a huge advantage. So at this point I have a little confession to make. I am not a tech head. I don't read code, I don't write code, but I heard this great line in a documentary about Steve Jobs, and he said, "I don't code and I don't design, I innovate." So I'm going to steal that line, and it's a bit wistful, but hopefully you'll afford me a bit of leeway. So you'd be forgiven for now asking, okay, so how does someone such as myself begin a journey or take on a journey of technical innovation? Well, I have to say probably two words, hard work and collaboration. So at this point on my journey, I was introduced to the National Acoustic Laboratories, where I met the very wonderful and very forward-thinking Director of Research, Professor Harvey Dillon. And I have to implore anyone in the audience who might be in a position such as Harvey Dillon to please keep the door open, keep an open mind, and invite in and listen to, you know, new technology opportunities. Because quite literally, if Harvey hadn't have been the person that he is, this project would have, pardon the pun, fallen on deaf ears. So Harvey introduced me to some, really interesting statistics. So what this graph, and I have during this project developed a love of graphs, what this graph indicates is that almost 3 times the number of children are detected with hearing loss at ages 6, 7 and 8. So basically as in comparison to the newborn screening test. So this means these children are at school for 1 to possibly 3 years with undetected hearing loss. These years are formative years, and the impact of that hearing loss is, quite literally catastrophic. So, there was a real need to improve detection. So how do you implement that though? Because something like 270,000 children start school for the first time each year. Massive numbers. At the moment, there's a barrier in terms of cost, expertise, and time to test that number of children through traditional means. And just to hear from one of the children themselves.
Are you listening? Listen to me. I want to tell you something. Hearing is one of our 5 senses. Hearing is very important. If you can't hear, it's pretty quiet. If you half hear, it's pretty confusing. Us kids make a lot of racket in the classroom. It's really noisy. If your hearing is no good, you're in trouble.
Most children don't have their hearing loss noticed until they start to do badly at school.
A student who has hearing loss is not getting any of the instructions, and therefore academically they're going to...
And as Anna said, it was game on. So now for the meaty end of the journey, perspiration. It's not like I hadn't sweated to this point, but now was really the time for a lot of hard work. So again, I call upon the words of Dr. Seuss. To explain this point in the process. You'll come to a place where the street's not marked, some windows are lighted, but mostly they're dark. Do you dare to stay out? Do you dare to go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win? Simple, it's not. Really, those words describe the journey of a serious game developer. Needless to say, we took the step and we went in. And I have to say, it was this point I could go forward on the journey with some funding from the New South Wales Government Department of Trade and Investment, which really helped us develop a prototype, which is really an end-stage game. So just very quickly, the first thing to do really for us was understand the problem. There's 3 different types of hearing loss: conductive, sensorineural, and central auditory processing disorder. So we had to understand the problem. The next thing we had to do was to understand the traditional solutions and the traditional types of hearing tests. And these included visual reinforcement audiometry, play audiometry, and pure tone audiometry. Visual reinforcement audiometry gave me a clue to how we could tackle the game, because it's based on giving a reward to the kids when they look to where the target sound is coming from. So the next stage was to translate the solution, the testing, and combine it with game design principles to hopefully create a captivating and effective hearing test. So now I'm speeding through because I've talked too long. I'd like to introduce Kwao, who's been working on development with me, to tell you a little bit about the innovation.
Testing 1, 2, 3, perfect. Which one is the button?
That one.
So since the beginning of the development of Hear Right Now, we've had a very interesting conflict. On one hand, we have the very strict requirements of a clinical test, and on the other hand, we have all the classical game design principles. In this case, for example, the basic premise of the test is the kid is presented with a sound, and if they can hear it, they press a button. If they cannot, then the sound gets louder. But if they could hear it, then the sound gets quieter. That goes on until we find an average that sort of indicates what is the kid's hearing level. But game design usually tells us that you should put all visual elements, audio elements, all combined together to make for a really interesting experience. But in our case, we've had to separate all the visual and all the rewards after the audio comes in, because otherwise we'll be interfering with the test itself and it will be completely invalid. Now, we cannot punish the player for performing bad as in any other game, because that would mean punishing the kid for having bad hearing. But at the same time, I mean, Hear Right Now is not a game that's training them to do something or teaching them something new. We just want to assess them. But we still need them to play their best. We still need them to do the most they can. Otherwise, we won't be getting a good reading of their hearing levels. Now, the way we're doing this is, again, we develop a little narrative. We work with a writer. I'm gonna go into the pillars of game design a bit later. But basically, we're putting a lot of the rewards after the kid has already heard the sound. Now, in this right hand here is the calibration screen, which also has a little bit of an interesting story, because when we're developing a hearing test that's going to be used in computers all around the country, there's a lot of variables that are completely out of our control, right? For example, the quality of the headphones they're using, the audio card, even the level of the volume they have in the operating system, and all that kind of stuff. So the very simple solution we came up with, surprisingly, is we have two sounds at different levels. The piano is louder than the guitar, and we're simply asking them to adjust their volume so they can hear one but not the other one. That really levels the playing field to a point where we can say, okay, the kids are playing it at not too loud but not too quiet at the same time, and that this solution was approved by the Harvey Dillon from the National Acoustic Laboratory. Now, for those of you who have read The Art of Game Design by Jesse Shell, you'll be familiar with with the 4 pillars. A few interesting tidbits from our development in the mechanics department. There are some areas where we're just putting a giant red button in the game. It does nothing, but it's just there to motivate the kids to press things. Otherwise, they would be a little confused by not having anything to press on. Story-wise, we made sure that the story is completely engaging for 10 minutes. Otherwise, the kids will be bored and just start randomly clicking and, of course, invalidate the test. And technology-wise, as many others have said, it is hard not to recommend Unity. It's so good for prototyping and quickly making changes, especially with a project like this that's constantly being assessed by the clinical requirements. So we have to go and change the values. We have to go and change this and that. And for the data tracking, we're using Parse.com, which is also a great system from anything to analytics, from analytics to user management and all that kind of stuff.
He should be wearing headphones, but so you could hear the audio, we left them off.
That's one of the scenes of the game. As you can see, putting it on the iPad has... Well, one really quick advice, test as much as possible and as early as possible your game. In one of our quick tests, we had a hand to tell the kids that they should be pausing a bit and just wait, but the hand actually had the exact size of the hand of a 5-year-old. So what they did, they just grabbed their own hand and put it on top of that hand, thinking something was going to happen. And of course, that's something that I would have never realized if we hadn't tested properly. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Caroline just to close this up.
Yes. 20 minutes seems like so much time, but it goes so quickly. So anyway, we're in the clinical trial phase, and would love to say the results are looking really positive. We're adapting and changing, and just to finally finish off, for those of you who are considering a move into serious gaming, with the words of Dr. Zeus, and you can all read those. And don't hold back. Get on your way. Thanks, everyone.